Spotting and finding and working with, collaborating with influencers for your brand is probably easier than you may think. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to spot, find, and collaborate with influencers. Edwin Dearborn here, another edition of Growth Driven. How are you? Become fascinated with this concept of working and collaborating with influencers. And I know that the very first reaction is that I don't know anybody with 1 million followers. Or if I do know someone off chance with 1 million followers, there's no way that they would want to work with me, or I couldn't afford it. So let me debunk this mystique called influencer. I know people like to throw around the title, I'm an influencer. It bothers me particularly when they do that, because if you're truly an influencer, you don't need to say it. But here's how it would work for you and me on a collaborative level that would be easier to access than having to pay an influencer. And yes, you can pay influencers. You can put down big bucks, big brands do that to sponsor their content. But if you're a local business or you're an extremely niche business, we have to find influencers that make sense to you. It has to be in context to your industry, your niche, your location. It's got to make sense. Now, there's specific types of influencers, and I want to kind of break that down first. First, you have a nano influencer. They influence between 1,000 and 10,000 people. Okay. Now, it didn't sound like a lot of people in comparison to the person that's got 1 million, but hey, if they're able to influence a couple of thousand people and that's your audience, that can be a game changer for you. So if, let's say I have an influencer who's a consultant to dentists and I want to do marketing for dentists. Yeah, I can only influence 2,000 dentists. Wow, that's a nano influencer that can move the needle big time for my brand. A micro influencer has between 10,000 and 100,000 connections that they influence to a greater or lesser degree. So now let's take a look at your database. Hopefully you have a database. If you don't have one, you need to remedy that right away. You need to have the contacts of all your past clients, past leads, collaborative partners, anybody that you've been in touch with. You should have been collecting their emails. Moreover, you probably have built some connections on social media like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. All these people have the ability to influence a certain number of people. It may be only one, but there's about 5% of your audience that has a greater influence than just one. So I would estimate, let's say my mailing list is about 5,000. I've got about 250 people within my database that can influence 5, 10, 15 people towards my product. They can be people that actually can have an impact. Now, I can go about it in kind of a haphazard way and just get followers, or I can begin my reach out on social media to specific individuals. And I can ask them to collaborate with me. That is the whole bright idea of this show, Growth Driven. I'm at to the point now where I've interviewed in the last 6 or 7 months, 60 professionals. Now, all of them were influencers to some degree. I had David Meerman Scott, best-selling author, been all over the world. I just had, Howard Farzan on my show yesterday. He influences tens of thousands of dentists. And then I've got other guys that have been on my show that influence a few hundred or a few thousand that would be considered nano influencers. When I ask them to collaborate and be a guest on my show, it's much easier. And here's the unlock that I want you to really look at. When I ask them to collaborate with me in creating content, it's much better than if I was to call these individuals and say, hey, I want to collaborate with you in business. So I've removed a wall by going, let's collaborate in creating content. Let's collaborate in creating a show. I have Growth Driven. You have your show. Why don't I'll be a guest on your show, you be a guest on mine. This has opened way many doors, many, many more doors, more powerful doors for me than if I was just to send a cold email, do cold calling, or stop by, knock on the door and go, hey, I want to do business with you. I've got something I want to present to you. Nobody really wants to be presented to unless they've found out about an incredible investment, an incredible opportunity. And yes, the word of mouth is growing. But how do you get that word of mouth going? And so probably the fastest way that you can get the word of mouth going is collaborate with fellow content creators who are influential over a certain number of people, whether that's 1,000 people, 10,000 people, 100,000 people. But I guarantee you people within your database, within your followers, that have got more influence with others than most people. That's who you want to be collaborating with. Now comes the bright idea. Okay, so if I find Howard Farzan, who was on my show, big leader in dentistry, and I said, hey, Howard, let's collaborate on a business idea, he'd probably not even return my phone call. But when I sent the email going, hey, I have a show, I want to interview you on it, that opened the door. And then once we established rapport and the initial relationship, I could then say, hey, I've got this product I want to talk about. Would you be willing to look at it? Collaborating with these influencers to create content is a powerful, powerful unlock. Now, you're probably sitting to yourself going, well, I'm not a content creator, or I'm not very good at content creating, or I'm not that bright, or I'm not skilled in public speaking or creating memes or writing books. How do I overcome that? Well, the way that I would do it is I would start, one, educating myself about content creation, because there's many forms of content that you can create, and there's probably something on the table there that you could grab a hold of and start running with. Facebook Lives could be one. Interviews of people could be one. Writing long posts. I don't know. Figure it out. But then you approach those influencers and you say, look, I've got some ideas. What do you think? And then all of a sudden, ideas begin to spark. Okay. Now, let me give you an example of how I would do this. Just local coffee shop. I'd be asking people, hey, are you active on Instagram? Hey, are you active on Yelp? Start asking them to collaborate. Start asking them to post their photos. That's a beginning step. You could also have meetups of influencers, give them free stuff. If I was a coffee shop, hey, every first of the month, I've got Influencer Day. If you've got more than 1,000 followers, come. I'll give you free bagels, free coffee. We'll talk, we'll collaborate. And all of a sudden, everybody's tagging each other, tagging your location right there in your coffee shop, spreading the word about what's happening in your coffee shop. See, that's a simple idea. You could sponsor a meetup. You could sponsor an event and invite influencers and have them speak. You could put on a circle, kind of a meetup circle where everybody goes around, a round table, and talks. You could get bright with this idea. There's ways to extract a strategy, simple as it may be, but once you begin to deploy that simple strategy and you start to get some motion and some leverage and some activity and some success, more bright ideas will come about. But you're going to have to begin to have that conversation with these smaller influencers to kind of get their bright ideas. And that's the key. Get them to participate, get them to contribute. That's what collaboration's about. It's not you coming up with all the bright ideas. It's coming up with an initial idea, and then together you co-collaborate. And because they're co-collaborating and they're co-creating this, they get excited, and now they start to bring their friends. These are just some of the bright ways that you can find the influencer next door. And that influencer next door is somewhere in your database. It's somewhere in your followers. And then you come up with bright ideas of how to collaborate. Believe me, this is a way that you can begin to use social media way more effectively than just posting those cat videos or what you ate for dinner. There is a way to leverage this. Now, if you're lacking that strategy, you go, Edwin, I still don't get it. I get what you're talking about. It sounds exciting. I'm just not there yet. I don't know how to do it. I don't even know how I would begin that process. Reach out to me. I'm a virtual chief marketing officer. I work with a number of brands to help them grow. I know how to develop a strategy. I understand social media. I know how to work with smaller influencers to get you some progress. But I'm just telling you, this is a major unlock, and this is the subject of my next book, which will be hopefully released within the next 30 days. Collaborating with the influencer next door. This is a great, great strategy for any small business person, entrepreneur, startup. They exist. You can do it. It's just a matter of initiating some communication and some bright ideas, and believe me, it will grow legs. This has been Edwin Dearborn, another edition of Growth Driven. Make it a great day. Bye-bye.